welcome to this episode of the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Boundy, who is the author of Radical Value. He works with organizations to help them grow. But why I particularly want to speak to him is because of the way that he does that, because for him, it's all about customer focus. So Mark, welcome.
Fred, thanks for having me here. I'm thrilled. We have turned into kindred spirits in a very short time.
We had a little call earlier on, and we're having too much fun. I thought, actually, we have to reschedule the podcast because we ran out of time to record it. Consummate professionals, the pair of us. So to avoid that, to make sure I don't lose the goodness again, let's get stuck in, and we'll go through these 6 elements of PQ, because I'm really interested to hear your take on these and how salespeople can apply this to make the most of the opportunities that they have. And I always start with trust. You know, they're all interlinked, all the 6 elements, but for me, trust just makes sense to start with. Foundation relationships, good communication. So what are your thoughts on trust?
It is, as you said, it's foundational. Gartner a couple years back found that only 3%, customers find only 3% of sellers are trusted, or 2% of sellers are trusted advisors. 13% of customers believe sales reps understand their needs. So how important is it to be different from 98% of other sellers out there? There's a huge opportunity, and trust is pivotal. I use this mental picture of what people buy is your value, and that's why I wrote the book Radical Value. And think of one of those old 2-pan scales that miners or the traders used to use, that Lady Justices still pictured in. And on one pan is your value, what value you have versus your competitors. And the other pan is your price premium. And the arm, and since all of this is inside of the customer's head, the customer, it's Alice in Wonderland, and things grow, shape, and distort instantly. So it's not a concrete thing, except on the right-hand side where your price is, that's pretty concrete. But the length of the arm from the pivot to where the value pan hangs can grow or shrink. And that depends on how much trust you have. If the customer trusts you, the same amount of value seems to weigh more against your price premium. If they don't trust you at all, no amount of value is going to overcome your price premium.
Wow. So I love it because it's so visual, and I'm a visual thinker. I can absolutely picture that. The value's growing based on trust. So rather than just going, well, let me put more value in, let me bang on more about ROI, let me go on about all this sort of stuff. The secret is to let me do things to be more trusted.
Yeah. Think about this. If you're, I help a lot of software companies, and every software company can show ROI of their solution. They've all got great ROI if you read their stuff. right? So just ask me. I have ROI, right? And so which ROI actually gets into the customer's brain as something that they will use and evaluate you against? If they don't trust you, your ROI number means nothing. So everybody's got ROI, but who's got ROI inside the customer's brain? And that is the organization and the salesperson who is trusted.
That is so cool. So cool. And so what are some of the things that someone might practically be able to do?
Well, I think it's super important to understand your customer's business and understand your customer's world better than everybody else. Imagine this, right? We have your customers, every organization has siloed and has subdivided, where 15 years ago, there might be 5 people in your buying committee. Now it's 6.8 average, but regularly it goes to 12, and I often see 20. And that's not because the products have gotten more complex. It's that the buying organizations have got more complex. Departments have become silos, have become sub-silos, have become sub-sub-silos, have become soda straws. And nobody on your buying committee really understands their global business anymore. They understand their corporation, they understand their politics, they understand their organization, but they don't understand their own business. And if you're trying to help them buy something that improves their business, they're able to judge how it affects their soda straw, but not their business. And there's nobody in the buying committee who can do that, usually, or very few, or very inaccessible few. And so you need to be, as the seller, the person who can walk the customer team through that, which means understanding, having some business acumen, being able to walk them through those consequences. So being that expert and taking the time to be a consultant, like 98% of your competitors aren't.
I think I'm going to ask you the reason why do you think that 98% are so bad? I have an opinion on this. I wonder if it's the same.
It's because there's a lot of reasons, but part of it is because selling organizations have siloed and sub-siloed and soda strawed. Because now I have clients that instead of, when I was young, there was 5 departments that touched the customer, 2 of which had sales roles. There's inside sales and outside sales. And then there was customer service and, whoever else. I was a product manager. Now there are 12 or 15 departments touch the customer. And we tell salespeople, your job is this tiny part of the sales bit. And we tell the SDR, your job is this tiny part. And the bid specialist and the demo specialist and the technical sales support. And so nobody owns the sales process anymore. They own their little part. And it's really hard to coordinate silos. That's because human nature, when you're in a different silo, anthropology tells us that human beings are wired to think we, they, and not cooperation and coordination. It's just not the way human beings are wired.
Interesting. So I knew you'd probably go down that route, but also you mentioned time and this kind of self-centered focus on, I want to take you through my pipeline, my little bit of silo as fast as I possibly can. So you just don't spend the time to understand them. But
Yes.
you're never going to be in that position to be trusted because you haven't done the hard yards.
Excellent, Fred. You're absolutely right. When you get that siloed, now it's no longer getting the job done. It's getting my part of the job done. And because you're not thinking of the customer's needs and you're not partnering with the customer and you're not genuinely co-creating a solution with your customer, you're just jamming them through your part of the process. And as a matter of fact, your vice president of sales pays you for how fast you ram through your activities. I once worked for a company where there was 2 SDRs that made appointments for me, and one made 40 or 50 calls a day and got great appointments, and one was getting all the bonus money because he dialed 300 times a day, and he hung up right at 1.25 seconds when the call counter tripped his bonus meter, and before anybody could actually pick up and say hello. He was getting all the bonus money for not talking. And yeah, we laugh about it, but how close is your company to that exact same behavior?
It was kind of an exasperation type resignation. And it's not,
we're not a for-profit company. Yeah, we're not a for-profit company. We're a for-process company.
The customers, we have potatoes that are hot and we can't handle them for longer than a couple of seconds and we chuck them across to people.
Customers are great as long as they're kept downwind.
It's a Friday afternoon here, and I'm just kind of tired, but it's so serious. Let's go back into the PQ elements. It sounds like we've just lost the concept of selling, which is win-win focus. It's like, I just need to get my little win, not even my company's win. I'm going to get my little win sorted, bang, I'm off ski. And it's the whole point of good partnering is with that understanding of the customer, we get it. We've got that focus. We want mutual benefit.
Yeah.
What's going wrong?
Yeah, one of the working titles of my book before I decided on radical value was something about the multiplier effect. When you add benefits to your customer, the benefits come back to you in multiples. When you simply do something nice for your customer, they will do so much more for you because you're affecting 2% of their business and they're affecting 20% of yours. It's simple math that win-win orientation is the way you win. And I tell people that stop thinking about selling your stuff. Start thinking about and taking the mindset that you are growing your customer's business using your stuff. And that puts you in that win-win mindset.
Well, and again, I think this is why I love PQ so much. When I came across it, it just kind of sung to me. It's because they're all interlinked, these elements. Interdependence. We are interdependent, not only with our customers, but with other people within our business. And what you're saying there, the multiplier effect, I'm too stupid to twig this, but that's a really elegant way of saying that. You will, by embracing that independence, you'll multiply everything that you do.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a famous old book on account management strategy written by, I want to say it's Noel Capon, and I think it's called Account Management, and it was written in the early 2000s. And he described levels of customer relationship, where the lowest level is you're strictly a commodity. And the highest level, that he actually used the word interdependent, where the companies merge and where the relationships and the working relationships are interdependent. And sometimes you can't tell where your company ends and the other one begins. I had a guest on my podcast whose customer gave him the ultimate compliment and saying, your people go native. Right? They come and they sit in our office and they start talking like us and thinking like us and acting like us and joining our meetings. And that is the highest compliment. That is what you're striving for. And that is what strategic account management tries to get to as the ultimate epitome. And so if you start with that thinking, you're going to get that way. It's not something I'm going to do someday. It's something it's a corporate relationship that we get to because I started it that way.
And the problem is, I don't know if I'm in big cynical mode today or what. I can imagine senior, sales leaders hearing, "Oh, people have gone native," being meant as a, as a compliment, and going, "Oh dear, well that'll be bad, because I'll be giving too much stuff away to the customer." That's what the ears will potentially hear, as opposed to, you guys are so good, you get us, and you're there, and you click.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'll just.
Yeah, one of the rest of the parts of that story is that this was an engineering services firm, and the customer was an oil company, and they were designing big refineries, for instance, or a drilling installation. And there's always something you didn't design in, right? A surprise. And so we have to change the design because we discovered this problem in the design. And the customer says, I think we should solve it this way. And the engineering services company says, you know what? That's a good idea, but if we do it this way, it'll save you this much money. And the customer says, great idea, we'll do it. So what this company did was they kept a tally of all the ideas that they had over the course. And during the project capstone meeting, when they're handing the project over and everything happened, he pulled out his tally sheet and said, you paid us $2 million for this, and here's the ideas that we generated, and it's over $4 million. So the benefits of going, so guess who, and of course these are brutally price competitive engineering services contracts, but guess what happened to his bid every time he went back to that oil company to bid? Because he had demonstrated an outcome. He had become interdependent. He showed the customer what the benefit of that interdependence was, and it became an insurmountable obstacle for his competitors from then on.
Brilliant. There must have been some pretty high level communication going on there. And so I don't mean at a high level of the organization. I mean some brilliant communication skills between the individuals involved. High transparency, giving each other feedback, giving information about themselves, sharing stuff. And this is one of the elements of PQ, self-disclosure and feedback. That must have been going on to be in the position to do that. And people fessing up to
Absolutely.
go, oh, we made a bit of a mistake here. Wrong. Let's pretend that we didn't design this in. It's like, oh, we made a mistake. We need help.
You always make mistakes. One of my stories was I was product manager for a cable product, and we were shipping products to Texas Instruments. Texas Instrument called us one day and saying, your cable's in spec, but it's not working in our process. There's something wrong. We're going to ship it back to you, and we're going to ship the process equipment. We're putting it through. We've got to have you. So we actually flew out to them so they wouldn't have to ship it and it would take less time. And we found out that we were within the spec that we'd agreed on, but the spec was wrong. The spec needed to be tighter. And so we actually inspected all the cable they had and found out the stuff that was just in the existing spec, just a little further inside the spec, and further until we figured out what the spec should be. So we made and inspected lots until we found out what their process really could handle, and on, right? And then once we had the new spec, now we had to ship and inspect their old product to the new spec. And we finally, and we couldn't get them all of the cable they needed, but so every day we ran some of the cable and we would ship them some every day just to keep a little further ahead of their production line, until weeks later we're at the final get well meeting, and the customer told us this. They said, we knew your product was at the bleeding edge of technology, and you and one other company in the world could make this cable. And we knew that the other company, that something was going to go wrong because you're both at the leading edge of technology. But we knew that you would do exactly what you've done. That is, you flew in, you figured it out, you fixed it, you owned it, you inspected, and you got us well as quickly as you possibly could, and we knew it. The other company would have said, hey, you bought in the spec. It's your product. Don't be late with the invoice. And by the way, there's another shipment coming on your dock to that spec next week. Don't be late with payment for that either. And it turns out that we had a 15% price premium that we thought we deserved, but we knew we were 15% more expensive. And that customer went with us at a 15% price premium because they knew that we were going to be that self-disclosure, feedback, honest, transparent, own the problem, fix the problem kind of company. So the moral of the story is not screw up so you can prove how great you are.
Yeah. Designing a mistake with the solution ready to go. Look how good we are. What a diving catch. Yeah. Well, if you had stood closer, you would have had to dive, and actually, if you, oh no, that it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's move on to the next element then, or I think the next sequentially, but comfort with change. Now, this is one of the elements of PQ I find really interesting when we're thinking about professional salespeople and why they need to be comfortable with change.
Totally. Here's the thing. Before 2020, we used to tell ourselves that the only constant is change. And then 2020 basically told the world, here, hold my beer. I'll show you, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then 2021 said, you think you got game? Here. And I maintain that phrase, the only constant is change. We are not going to go to a new normal. The new normal is going to be a faster wave of bigger changes that you can no longer adapt to stepwise. See the change, plan what you're going to do, strategy around it, and then deploy it around your organization. That will not work. You have to change from the customer in. Everybody in the company, and especially salespeople, have to be responsive to how the customer's world is changing. And you have to be the first to respond. What was that movie about the the financial meltdown? The Big Short. The Big Short?
That is a movie. It rings a bell.
The head of one of the big Wall Street firms, they had discovered that all these bonds were worthless. And so he's telling his entire board of directors that they have to sell these things in a day before the rest of the world catches it. And he said, there's 3 ways to make money in this business. You can be smarter, you can cheat, or you can be faster. And I don't cheat. And we have a lot of smart people in this room, but it sure is easier to be first. And so that embodied the idea that, you know what? The building in not only comfort with change, but being progressively and proactively engineered to be the one who changes is a competitive advantage.
I think it is. I think
you're
we should spend more time
yeah,
training salespeople in what change is about. We are change agents, aren't we? Essentially,
you know what? You're absolutely right. Think about that siloed buying team trying to sit around a conference room making a decision, and everybody around that can decide whether to be silent and go along with everybody else in the room, or whether to open their mouth and take the social risk of advocating for anything. What makes them advocate is that they want to see they have a personal reason to want to change. And so as the seller, you have to give them the motivation to open their mouth and advocate for you while you're not in the room. You have to get that group to change and make a group buying decision with all of the social risk and all of the career risk and all of the threats associated with deciding to do anything at all. You have to help them overcome that perceived risk. And salespeople are doing pretty bad. Right now, no decision is winning half of B2B deals.
I wonder how much of that is to do with the fact, going back to the thing we're talking about ROI, in that we put together a very logical argument as to why change should take place. Yeah, anyone with an ounce of logic could use their left-hand brain and go, yes, of course I'm going to say that. However, I'm a human being with fears and hopes and dreams and...
Yeah, Fred, I shared this with you before, and I'm going to go around this mediocrity cycle. There's this cycle of mediocrity that happens in B2B sales. And let's start, if you're watching this on video, I can describe it to you if you're on audio. Salespeople, customers don't trust salespeople to be they are adequate but not exceptional, right? 2% are perceived as trusted advisors, 83% are not prepared. So salespeople are pretty unimpressive. When you ask them a question, they will go out and get the answer to that question, but they don't know enough about your business. They can't go beyond that. And as a result, customers go elsewhere to inform themselves because salespeople are basically useless. As a matter of fact, salespeople, according to CSO Insights, rank 9 out of 10 as far as information sources. So the customer goes out to the internet or to content or wherever else to create their own vision for the future. Oftentimes that vision for the future, because customers can't possibly know as much about your business as you do, that vision for the future is underwhelming, undersized, under-detailed, but it's as good as your customer knows. That's when they go out and bring salespeople in. And salespeople use great methodologies and great techniques to try to get the perfect understanding of what the customer of what the customer wants. So you think about it. We're trying to get a perfect understanding of the customer's imperfect vision of their future. So what happens, right? That vision of the future was cursed. It was so crippled and so undersized that it never was going to have the ROI needed to be approved by the executives. But the team who is self-informed did their best. It just wasn't good enough half of the time. So all these three the three people best at getting a perfect view of the customer vision become finalists. And so there's 3 proposals that are identical to one another because they all got a perfect vision of this imperfect customer vision. And now there's 2 things that happen. One, the ROI of that vision wasn't good enough. So and nobody differentiated themselves. So no decision wins half the time. The other half of the time, desperation, customer desperation wins. We've got to solve this. It does have ROI. None of these solutions are different, so we're going to let price win. We're going to take these 3 identical proposals and bid the top 2 off against each other until one of them gives up and dies of attrition. And we're going to make the sale. And then here's how the cycle completes. People buy that, and the solution doesn't meet half the time, 70% of the time, the solution doesn't meet the customer's needs. It disappoints expectations. And so they said, those salespeople really weren't that impressive anyway. I was right to do it this way. And so that's how important it is to be an expert in your customer's business. By having expertise, you can help the customer shape their vision of the future, which means you can offer a differentiated solution. So it's 2 same proposals plus you. And yours has ROI, and people are thrilled to make a decision going with you. And all of that does exactly what you talk about in your book, Fred, is you're co-venturing and you're co-creating a solution with your customer in a basis of trust, interdependence, and co-creation.
Mediocrity cycle. It's funny enough, as you were describing this, I was thinking of a book review I wrote this week. And I hope the guy reads it properly because I wrote as the title, not what I wanted, ... Next, but what I needed. And he absolutely nailed, because I picked it up thinking I wanted something, a bit like your customers go, we think we want this. And he thought, well, actually, I can tease enough for you to get that. And then when I read it, I went, what, he's not actually telling me what I thought he would, but this is really exactly what I require. So I do hope he reads it right.
and you want to be, you're exactly right. What a great review and what a high praise for that author of that book. But that's what you want to be for your customer.
Yeah.
And you can only be that by really knowing them, right? You've got to have your customer saying after that first sales call, that first discovery call, you know what? He or she, they really get me. They get me. They know me better than I knew myself. I want to work with this person. I want to co-create a go-live plan with them.
Because it has that terrible side effect that they start to trust you more as well.
That's exactly right.
It's the things you've got to do to build trust are going to help you do the rest of your job better anyway.
And so compare and contrast that with this mediocrity cycle where we're trying to more efficiently get around this low yield cycle that might lead, 10% success. 50% of the time, no decision wins anyway. And then you're one of 3 finalists who won on price for the other. So do that arithmetic. Even if you became the finalist every single time, you're still only winning 16% of the time.
Yeah. It's so elegant to put. I know. And then look, let me just add the last element in, which you've been talking about kind of all the way through anyway, which is the last element PQ we've not spoken about deliberately, but have, which is future orientation.
You're absolutely right. Trying to see beyond the sale, helping the customer see their own outcomes, see themselves, envisioning themselves succeeding, and then helping them to create a path towards that. So that future orientation is critically important. And actually, I think one of the great contributions of the software as a service or anything as a service business model is that it's no longer about close them and run. It's about renewal, and it's about making sure your customer success and the birth of the customer success role, yet another silo, is
I was about to be facetious, say it is about close them and run. It's close them and pass them to somebody else. But I won't say that. That would
it's our secret. That's going to be edited out, ladies and gentlemen. Try to get a version of the pre-edit version of this podcast so that we hear that. Um, but the idea of customer success, making sure that the customer succeeds in adopting and using your product, that is,
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it sad that we went from when I was young? I'm older than you by a chunk, I'll bet. But when I was young, it was about making sure the customer succeeded, and then we rationalize the sales process until customer success is no longer a thing. And now we've got this brilliant new innovation that customer success is important. So we invent another department to make sure that happens.
So you started it now. No, but seriously, it is. And I think that's when we were chatting last time. I said actually, customer success is what I based the model that pulls the various parts of the book together, my book together, because it just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
Salespeople should be thinking like this.
Yep.
Actually, it's a bit sad I had to write the book like
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, one of the things I say in my book is that everybody who touches the customer needs to understand enough about the customer's business so that everybody can have a business discussion with your customer. The person who's installing your factory automation on the production floor, between nuts that he's tightening up, needs to stand up, stretch his back, look across the aisle to another area of the factory and say, that looks weird over there. Do you ever get a problem with that? Yeah, you do? What happens when it goes wrong? Who has to get involved? What does that cost you? How many times a year does it happen? And how many dollars a year do you think that is? And don't have to sell anything, but that installer takes that information back. And think about it. The salesperson will never get on the floor, will never see that problem, will probably never hear about that problem. But the installer sees it every doggone day for a month while they're in there installing and debugging their solution. And multiply that times 15 different roles in your companies and imagine how much better you are able to create a future orientation, create a win-win orientation, help your customer change, and be comfortable with redirecting your people because you engaged company to company, not salesperson to customer buying team.
Yeah, for me, makes so much sense. And I can see it also being a differentiator. I really can. In that it's sort of when you put that proposal together, part of it of making it different from the other two is they've said partnering in theirs, haven't they? Yeah, they do. Everyone does. P-word, put it in. Sounds good. Have they said how they're going to partner? No. Oh, well, actually, what we do is we train all our people in partnering skills. They understand elements of PQ. They understand basic sales, not because they're going to try and pitch you or present you, but they'll spot opportunities and they'll talk to you about them to make sure that if there's anything we can do better, help you with it. That's how we do it. That's how we roll.
We're business to business problem solvers.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, right. Now you've explained it like that. And I tell you what, we've got a training session coming up. And if you want your people to step in on it, we'll foot the bill. Because actually, if you know what we're doing, we'll do it even better.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to me.
It's absolutely brilliant. I love it, Fred. Absolutely love it.
It makes sense to me anyway. But well, two of us. That's two of us.
And think about it, right? Over the course of 20 or 30 years, as selling organizations have gotten more subdivided and siloed, we went from 5 people, 2 of which are in sales, to 15, 3 of which are in sales roles. And we told all the rest of those people, shut up, do your job, stay in your lane, and come back to the office. And now, it went from sales having 40 or 50% of the customer relationship to sales is a minority shareholder today. And we still follow that mantra of telling everybody else, shut up, stay in your lane, and come back to the office. And it was like the boiling frog, right? Suddenly, what used to be a good idea 20 years ago is no longer even viable. It is now an option for your competitors to kick your butt if you don't do this.
Yeah. So interesting. But yeah, you're right. And of course, everyone's too busy. Too busy to do that. Too busy to do that. So stay in lane, shut up. Yeah, however you want to express it. It's a simple sort of thing. But
stay in your lane. That's like it's a statement of corporate mediocrity right now. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. It's none of your business. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I thought I worked for the business. That would automatically make it so. But anyway, so
No, it's not.
ah,
Shut up
so
and do.
many things that we need
Yeah,
to
there's
address.
about 3 more podcasts together, aren't there?
There is. I'm trying to be disciplined here. I'm writing. No, don't ask that question, Fred. Why? Because we'll never ever finish. But no, I think there are. I think there's a couple of things that would be fun just to kick around for one sort of special episode. So let's reserve those. I've made a note. Don't worry.
Okay.
How can people? No, tell you what. I'm going to ask you one more question. One more question. You and I are going to get on a plane. We're actually going to get on a plane. We're allowed. Let's pretend so it's a hypothetical one. Yeah. And we're going to go somewhere and we're going to do some good. You and I, with our own fair hands. There's nothing to do with sales. Doesn't have to be that. It's like a part of the world where we reckon they could do with a bit of a leg up, bit of assistance. What part of the world would that be and why? Is it Africa, Asia, or Latin America?
Wow. There's room in every one of them. I probably, with the language barrier, I would do better with Latin America. So I'm going to base it on my ability to communicate. Not that I speak any of the other languages, but I'm least.
Least
I'm not
worst.
fluent. I'm least lost in Latin America.
Dos cervezas.
I'm the least help. That's where I'm the least helpless.
No,
I can
that's
ask for
funny.
a beer and find my way to the bathroom in just about any Latin American language.
That's okay. I'll do the good. You just look after me then. No, the reason I ask, and people who do this to podcasts regularly know that what I like to do is I like to try and say thank you to the guests, and I do that by making a donation on their behalf, and I do that through B1G1.
Ah,
Buy one, give one. They align to sustainable development goals. And so I sort of just pick 3 parts of the world, and the one I've got teed up ready to go is to provide some business training for women in Guatemala for the Latin American option.
absolutely love it.
So
I'm
I'm
in.
gonna,
I will go there with you.
at the moment, I'm gonna donate, and they will do it for us. But who knows? Maybe we can go and actually deliver it for them.
We'll zoom to Guatemala and learn a little Spanish.
That's it. Well, I can pick up the Spanish bit. I can do that bit.
Yep.
So
Like
yeah,
I say, I can order a beer and find the bathroom already.
that's it. Well, you speak Spanish as well, then. That's fine. Um, that's cool. Muy bien. So, how can people get in touch with you? You've shared a lot of really decent stuff, and it's a genuine thanks, and that's what I want to do to say thank you. But how can they get in touch?
Well,
To reach out to more?
if you're afraid to talk to me and you just want to learn more, go ahead and go on Amazon, the big A, and buy Radical Value. If you actually want to get a little bit brave, I'm at Mark with a K, at Boundy Consulting, Boundy Consulting.com.
Brilliant. I don't think you put people off at all. I think I hope you will get people to get in touch and that you can share more stuff with them.
I hope so too. I'm always happy to help.
No, thank you so much for your time.
Fred, thank you. It was a really fun conversation.
Cheers.
Cheers.